thought I could talk about my spiritual awakening journey. And it's definitely a talk I'm excited to give. And when I was thinking about this talk and where it'd be a good place to start, I think we could restart in high school. And in high school, I went through a lot of loss, and it was essentially my guide saying, hey, like, we're asking you to make these changes, and you are not making those changes or unwilling to face your pain. And so we're going to create circumstances in your life that are going to force you to face the pain you don't want to look at and make the changes you've been hiding and running from through your addictive patterning up until that point. And that was like in high school. That was me losing my friend group my junior year, which my friend group wasn't always treating me the best and was really a blessing in disguise. But at the time it would go, universe, like I'm just starting I'm I'm just starting to feel like I can put myself out there and you're taking away these people. What the hell? And then realizing later, like, oh, you know, the my friend group just like was like decided to unfriend me, but in truth, they weren't always treating me the best, and it was something I was hiding from and not looking at. And so the universe gave me like a little kick in the butt and was saying, now face now these people are no longer in your life, and you have to make new friends rather than you trying to stay with these friends who are mistreating you and not treating you the best. And shortly after that, we eventually got more into like smoking weed and stuff, which was definitely something I did not need in high school with already the pain I was going through. And also like me not facing me not facing like my video game use and like trying to hide from trying to hide from the fact of, hey, the universe is telling me I need to play less video games, and me ignoring that, me trying to sit with it, but then eventually buying a new video game and getting in a car accident on the way home, as the universe saying, hey, wrong choice, you really need to face your video game addiction and technology addiction and play less video games. And so the universe essentially forcing me to look at the things that I was trying to not look at. And during that time, change really felt like I was aware I needed to make changes, but felt completely incapable of stepping into my power and making those changes. And my guide saying, these are the changes you need to make, and me ignoring that. And so my guides essentially creating big moments of me losing my friends, of me getting in a car accident on the way home from buying a video game, as a way of going, no, you need to face this. And we are trying to keep you on track with your awakening, and with how you're going to eventually help others, and these things are not helping you stay on track. And that's what we realize about negative experiences. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing something wrong if we have a big like kicker, but some people are allowed to stay in a lot negative experiences a lot longer than others, but oftentimes it's the universe trying to keep us on track for our awakening journey or our soul mission. And when we're given the guidance of change and not really listening to it is when we tend to have experiences that feel like big losses and feel like the worst timing when they happen in the moment. But in truth, is the universe saying, like, our ego might say, I can't handle this loss, but our ego can't handle it, but our soul's been craving the change that loss will bring. And it's the universe actually helping set our soul free from the patterns our ego or our personality structure is unwilling to face at the time, because our soul lives in a place of sobriety. Our soul lives in a place of love. And when we're not treating ourselves with love, our soul sees it from a neutral perspective, but it's not really able to, it's like almost like the child, and the soul is the parent and your child is your ego structure, and the child has to turn towards the parent and ask the parent for help in order to for the parent to help that child, or for the child to become more of the parent that it doesn't want to become by getting lost in the addictive patterning. And our soul does really desire to experience more of a life as the soul, and when we are not in alignment with that is when we kind of can have a tendency to go through big losses or car accidents or things where you go, oh my God, like my friends were my only friends at the time in high school. Like, and me being like, wow, like I now have no friends, even though the universe was giving me a message before that of, hey, play less video games and make different friends. And then me not really taking that advice full on and getting in a car accident that helped me to some degree face my addiction to video games, and also then losing my friends, which then was like, oh, now I have to make new friends. And me even being so stubborn and not changing, just not making new friends my junior and senior year. And I put like little effort to try and put myself out there a little more. And the people I tried to put myself out there with didn't really pick it up, and then just giving up kind of after that, which was my own aversion of change, not that I was destined to have no friends in my life. And there is many different timelines that we can walk in a year, and we kind of, the universe, our angels and guides are always guiding us, but our choice of sobriety, our choice to make positive changes in our life kind of helps decides which timeline we end up walking. And realizing that I could have walked a timeline where I stopped playing video games, where I faced my pornography addiction, and probably like my senior year, the kicker was I didn't face my pornography addiction, even though for years had wanted to face it. And eventually then my senior year getting a friction burn on my penis and having to face it. That was the last kicker of high school. And realizing there was timelines where I stopped playing video games, faced my pornography addiction, made different friends, and never really having any of those traumatic experience happen. But because I was unable to listen and unable to listen to the guidance, it then kind of forces the universe's hand of we have to give you something to keep you on track, which is going to be a negative experience or a loss most of the time. And it doesn't mean always that when negative or awful things happen that the universe was knocking us back into alignment, but a lot of times that is the case. And especially if we are someone that avoids changes or is avoiding stepping into to the greater sobriety or greater boundaries or greater advocating for our needs that the universe is asking us to do. And sometimes, we might have had traumatic events that makes it really hard for us to speak up for ourselves. But and sometimes the hardship we experience isn't so much the universe saying you're not in alignment or you're not on track, but it could just be like you've been through a lot of pain around speaking up for yourself, and these situations of where you have to speak up for yourself are going to continue to happen. And I've had this experience. This is why I'm able to talk about it. What they're going to continue to happen is a way of freeing the part of you that wants to speak up for itself, but feels incapable. And you could even look at that perspective as like the kickers in your life. Like, we know there's a part of you that wants to change. We know you feel incapable of making these changes. So these negative experiences are going to happen in order to help you make those changes, which is it's like maybe a little bit more of a gentle perspective to look at those negative experiences from the lens of. But even so, I think, especially in high school, there were like I was given the guidance ahead of time of, hey, make these changes. And I almost pretty sure that there were timelines where I listened a little bit better, made the changes, and then didn't have to go through those negative experiences, or those negative experiences wouldn't have been as hard to deal with at than how they were when I avoided the changes completely and then they happened, which is kind of interesting. But all those experiences in high school really helped me hone into, oh, I'm starting to see my patterns and I'm starting to see my pain, and I'm becoming a lot more aware of all the ways in which I avoid change, all and those negative experiences really, like, you can think of them as kickers, and they kick you awake and they make you more self-aware of, oh, I constantly obsessed with sex because of all the pornography use I used, or oh, like I was I like looking back, like, not really, I didn't really understand losing my friends at the time, and just thought it was like, universe, why would you do this? They were my only friends. But then now looking back, like, oh, they were like not always the nicest to me. And then also being aware later, like meeting them again, and like in between freshman and sophomore spring of college, and being like, oh, they got a lot more into smoking weed, and that wouldn't have been good for me during during my time in high school, because I already had enough addictions as it was. And so we might not understand why something happens in the moment, but hindsight is usually 2020, or like even in the future, we get more and more information of why something might have happened. And so those events really made me a lot more self-aware of one, my patterns, because it gave me no other choice but to face my patterns. And it also, and when you're starting to become aware of your patterns, you're becoming more conscious, and you're waking up more. And so that was kind of the start of it, was in high school, of being like, the universe for me loves the story of my life, loves seems to be like giving all my power away to certain things, and then the universe essentially ripping the pacifier out of my mouth and being like, oh, what are you going to, like, you now have to learn how to soothe yourself without that pacifier or crutch. And that's been a lot of my journey, but that's really what wakes you up. And even recognizing that we get to choose how fast or how slow we evolve, or how fast or slow we ascend. And the level of light we embody, the level of sobriety and empowerment we are willing to stand for in our life, we are essentially the cleanup crew. The light workers are the cleanup crew for this world. And how fast we move, and this world moves into world peace, and people no longer starving for food on this planet, or having clean drinking water wells in their community, to some degree, is how fast are the light workers going to evolve on this planet. And we were not the cause of this world's problems, but we are the ones cleaning up this world's problems. And how quickly you choose to align yourself in sobriety to serve the greatest well-being within yourself and others will tune you more to the sensitivity of your heart, which then you'll become more aware of the words that are not good you say to yourself or others. And then you'll start to walk and treat others with incredible levels of gentleness and care. And it starts with your own self-care. And when you are embodying that, is when more light is being anchored on the planet, which will then influence the people you know to anchor just a little bit more light. And when more and more light workers anchor more and more light, is when there's going to be a web of consciousness built across this planet, where unconscious deeds and acts are no longer happening on this planet, and where world peace is not, whether there becomes no other option but world peace, because we are the ones who are anchoring consciousness on this planet. And if you want world peace, anchor greater peace in your life, anchor greater light in your life. And really, the negative things we see happening in the world is because humans as a collective, not you necessarily, but humans as a collective, are avoiding growth and change. And so the universe gives the world a kicker of tragedy or war as a way of trying to quicken the evolution of humans. So we are hitting the markers of world peace, the markers of free energy, the markers of stronger community within our lives, and then eventually in the world's life, are the markers of more people meeting their soulmate by us willing to anchor that level of peace, that level of community, that level of connection in our own life first. That becomes a foreshadowing for the world. And that doesn't mean we're giving all our attention to the light and ignoring our earthly life, and that doesn't mean we're giving all our attention to our earthly life and trying to create all the change in the world and ignoring connecting to our angels or guides. Or maybe even we get a headache when we connect to our angels and guides because the energy's activating our pineal gland a little bit, or helping rewire our brain and not avoiding connecting them because it's a little painful. And you need to find balance of, I take action steps in my life, and I also take time to center myself with the connection of the angelic realms, or connection with my guides. And we need both. And for me, like later on in my spiritual journey, let's say like finding spiritual teachers like Matt Kahn and Diana Cooper, I became obsessed with the spiritual, but then would ignore my life and not realize that it's not so much about just connecting with the spiritual, but taking time to digest the energy I'm receiving from the teachers I'm listening to by taking action steps in my life, and not using spirituality and listening to spiritual teachers as an avoidance for life, or using meditation as an avoidance for life, which is what I definitely did. And still am trying to find balance in a little bit more, even now, if I'm going to be fully honest about my humanness. And so, and recognizing the opposite would be not only trying to create change in the world and ignoring any type of connection with my guides, because you need both. And we are like radio centers or tuning rods, and when we tune ourselves to angelic frequencies, it allows us to receive messages a lot clearer and have stronger intuition and know which directions to move in and which directions are a waste of time. And then when we do that, it's like, okay, using this energy to take action in our life, and not just taking action and ignoring listening to our intuition, or trying to strengthen our intuition a little through our connection with our guide. And whether that's listening to people that channel, or doing visualizations, or that's gonna be what you need to figure out is working for you, like what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And that's everyone will have a little bit different practices, even if that's meditating and imagining yourself dissolving into a void, or doing breath work. I usually like to do breath work and then imagine myself dissolving in a void, but I also do visualizations, and I like to mix it up too. So not only focusing on heaven and ignoring earth, and not only focusing on earth and ignoring heaven on earth, balance, finding balance in our life. And so I saying all of that, going in to bring it back to the talk of going into college. And in college, I talk about this a little bit in another video. It was really a time of a fresh start, and it was really a time where it felt like a time of contemplation and facing my patterns, which, like in high school, I got kickers, but really integrating those kickers in college. And starting off in college, I talked about this in another video, making a friend that was a girl that I was in love with. And being honest about, like, hey, like my reproductive system's still healing a little. And so we just ended up being friends. And then a couple months down the road, she ended up talking to another guy, and I still had feelings, and that relationship falling apart, and us not talking for a couple years after that. But what that loss of, like, oh my God, I love this person, and then her no longer being my life, put me into like my first kind of big grief cycle my freshman year. And this was like right after winter break. And the grief cycle, essentially, I had when I like soon after I hurt my penis in a senior year of high school, like I stopped using porn and was like trying to masturbate less, still really struggling with that. And is why one of the reasons why the friction burn took so long to heal. And then going into college and being and getting a lot better at not masturbating. And I think part of it was like feeling the love of this person, even though we were just friends, and feeling like met and accepted as I was really actually helped me not masturbate and let that part of my body rest a little. And then losing that relationship and suddenly feeling all this grief and all this loss, and actually ending up falling back into pornography. And what we realize about like events like that is the universe is testing you of like how quickly can you evolve, right? The universe is going to say, okay, you decide to let go of this pattern of using pornography, and we are going to give you an event that's going to make you want to self-soothe and reach for that addictive advice again. And you have the choice of, do I reach for pornography or do I stay solid in my sobriety? And if we stay solid in our sobriety, we're saying, okay, for we're ready for an uptick of power, of wholeness. Our evolution is going to accelerate more. And if we fall back into pornography or whatever substances we're using, and it's gonna feel at the time like really, like it's gonna feel like bad timing, or like if I had just been given a little bit more time, I would have let go in the pattern and not reached for it. But it's the universe saying, we are gonna put you under, like, we're gonna put you in bad circumstances of loss and grief to see, can you handle staying solid in sobriety, even in that, and not reach for the self-soothing, or are you going to go back to your old patterns? And either choice, it's okay, but your evolution will be accelerated if you decide to stay solid and not reach for your old soothing patterns. And me, I'm going to be honest, I really avoided change, and I really didn't get things right away by any means. And still turned out, still a teacher in spirituality, still like now sober, now feel very good about myself, but it was a journey that I did not get perfect. And falling back into pornography again for a year, and you know and back into like masturbating more often, a bunch, and eventually, and the reproductive system, eventually still got better and it was all okay. And we even realized that how hard we fall down only means we're going to have a higher rise in the future if we're willing to try for sobriety again. And so, like, it's all sophomore year using pornography, then being like, I really need to stop this. And it's like so crazy with addiction, because when we're addicted to things, when we're addicted to things, it's like you will say, I'm just going to use it once, and then all of a sudden you're using it regularly again. And you go, how did this happen? And it's like, because we're acting on unconsciousness of like using pornography or using substances. We then become not conscious in how we use those substances, because those substances aren't promoting consciousness, they're promoting unconsciousness. And when we're unconscious, we act unconsciously and then are unaware of our actions a little bit. And that definitely happened my sophomore year. And, in sophomore year, in another video, I talk about like my reproductive system finally got back to normal, but I then eventually started to get symptoms in that area that just discolored the skin a little bit, but like made me so self-conscious. And so that happened my sophomore year, and eventually found my way out of pornography use. And during my sophomore year, something I haven't talked about is my mom like paid for me to do a yoga teacher training my senior year of high school. That really, I think, in a lot of ways helped me cultivate a little bit more awareness, be more in my body. I became a lot more mindful of lifting weights that I was doing at the time, was creating a lot of muscle imbalances. And so I actually stopped lifting weights like my senior year of high school, and I was like pretty bulky. Like I'm right now 145 pounds, and in high school I was like 174 pounds of like a lot of muscle and a lot of chub. Like I always remember this, but in high school I took off I was getting massaged and I took off my shirt for this masseuse to give me a massage, and she went, "Whoa, you're way bigger than I was expecting." This is like always like, oh, like thinking about that always makes me blush a little bit. Um, but anyways, and so yoga was like really senior year. Like I had been doing a little yoga since I was 14. I would just go with my mom when she would go do yoga classes. But senior year of high school got way more into it. Was doing like 3 yoga classes a week, became a lot more aware of my body, where my body was tight, more aware of muscles and balances, and started to like work on that through stretching and lifting, and pretty much stopping lifting weights and just doing yoga. Um, but that kind of comes back around for my senior year of high school. Or no, not senior year of high school. That comes back around for my sophomore year of college in the spring. I start teaching yoga regularly at school, and like again, like the idea of teaching yoga, like I was working doing somatic therapy with Stephen Terrell, like he was doing sessions with me, and he told me my freshman year of like, you need to be teaching yoga. Your guides are telling me that you are meant to teach yoga, and and need to take that step. And I was like, okay, I wasn't really planning to teach too much, or like I just like could not get the confidence up to teach because I was like so scared to speak in front of people. But I was like, okay, and I auditioned to teach yoga at my college and didn't end up getting it. But then a year later, the person who was leading the yoga program at the time like reached out and was like, "Hey, I meant to hire you. I wanted to hire you before I left, and you can just take over the class because I'm leaving." And was really like a blessing of like I was not a good teacher at the start, but like she gave me her class, and so I started teaching like once a week, and so was starting to face my fear around public speaking. And then also that time, like my mom did another like blessing for me. Like I really feel grateful for my mom that like she gave me some pain, but also gave me like a lot of the resources I needed to like heal from that pain. And yoga definitely was a big part of that. And just getting more in tune with my body and listening to my body really did change a lot for me, and just feeling a little bit more relaxed and peaceful within myself. And my mom also my senior year took me to an ashram for my for my spring break senior year trip. Me, my mom, and my sister went to the Bahamas. It was like a Shivananda ashram. It's super traditional yoga, like chanting in Sanskrit, breath work. It's the same 26 poses. You wake up at 6 a.m. for meditation and kirtan every morning. And the yoga practice itself has chanting in Sanskrit and breath work. And it's like all about breathing gently and moving softly with your body. And it was like vegetarian meals. And so that was my senior year. And then going to college, I realized that there's a Shivananda Yoga Center in Chicago, which is where I went to school, uh, in the city of Chicago, just like 2 miles from campus. And so my sophomore year, starting to teach yoga and also starting to do the Shivananda yoga classes. And that was like really where I think like things started to become a little bit more spiritually aware and connected. And also like yoga in itself, like during my yoga retreat, we did like a Vipassana meditation where like I literally had to sit with my sexual fantasies a lot more. And after that Vipassana meditation, which is just like meditating all day, if you don't know what that is, like it felt like these dark clouds had cleared a little bit around my head, and kind of showed me that like in order to heal from darkness, we have to sit with our darkness and feel and face it. And so like little things like that, or like we watched some videos during my yoga teacher training of like different types of monks who like there was one guy, he like kept his right arm locked in a position for 12 years, and it's like and it literally did not waver at all. He was just like this. I don't know if we can see it, but he was just like this for 12 years, and kind of opened my eyes of that doesn't seem normal. And there might be like there might, even though I would not recommend doing that for 12 years as like a person seeking spirituality, kind of opened my eyes to there is more power in spirituality that I was aware of at the time. And also during 18 to 20ish, starting to find some spiritual books. Like first spiritual, I think I was 19 when I read this. I read Joy's Way by Dr. Joy, which has like some interesting practices that I didn't do, but just interesting ideas about how to develop consciousness. And then after that, I just like one day ended up searching Man of Light, which is a biography of written by Kimberly Passett, and it's talking about her husband. Her husband, like it's a biography, a little bit of his life, and he was like someone who could channel healing like electricity through his body to heal other people, and essentially became like, you know, like the glass balls with the little center, like a stem with the center, and it's like all the like electricity shooting out of that center. I don't know what they're called, but hopefully that's like he essentially could do that to heal people, but would be like running actual electricity through his body to heal people. And it was talking about like it was talking about his journey in spirituality and how he developed that gift, and was kind of like an out there book, but it really opened my eyes to like there is, and I've found like a couple healers like that, and really opening my eyes to there is power in spirituality. There is power that I'm not really wasn't really aware of before reading books like that. Even though people might say that's out there, that's not real. It's like, okay, that's a perspective, but what if it is real? And so starting to find some spiritual books, sophomore year, getting into Shivananda yoga, super traditional, doing a bunch of Shivananda yoga that summer, sophomore to junior year, cutting out pornography. And sophomore year, you know, I got symptoms, but it inspired me being vegan, going sober, and being vegetarian at first and going sober my start of my junior year, and eventually starting to even cut out like looking at half naked females on like Instagram my junior year of college. And really starting junior year was really like a time of starting to face my darkness and starting to like really try and work on not feeding those parts of myself anymore, which darkness can only live inside of you for how much you're willing to feed it. And you know, not drinking, like cutting out any type of toxicity, like pretty much cutting out alcohol my junior year, and all trying to make choices of taking better care of myself and being more healthy. And you know, like still during that time it wasn't like I was still like self-conscious, not super confident, felt very unworthy, felt like I was doing everything wrong, probably wouldn't always say the nicest things in my head. It wasn't like I had it all together. And I just stopped my pornography use like end of sophomore year. It wasn't like I was really figuring things out, had them fully figured out, but I was start taking the first little steps of doing that. And Shivananda yoga, like they also had meditation and kirtan at their center in the morning, and I would go to that. Like I think I went to it a couple of times my sophomore year, but would go to it a lot my junior year. And would go to the 6 a.m. meditation and kirtan. And eventually during my junior year time, starting to feel like I'm ready for a guru. Like just having this, like it wasn't like it was just like this feeling. It wasn't like I need a guru because my ego is telling me I need a guru. It was just like I'm just starting to have this feeling of like feeling like ready for a guru, and starting to have an idea, like this was kind of winter of my junior year, starting to have the idea of starting to have the idea of, I think I need to go to an ashram and find a guru, that was my thought then. And then like Shivananda yoga, like during the meditation and singing in Sanskrit in the morning that I would often go to, they would give like messages from either like Vishnu Devananda or Shivananda, which Shivananda created Shivananda, or was like the lineage holder of Shivananda yoga. And then Vishnu Devananda was like one of his prodigies or mentees, and he really spread Shivananda to the West. And they one day like kind of had this feeling of like, I need a guru. And they took a message from like the book. I think it was maybe Shivananda. I can't really remember. Maybe it was Vishnu Devananda, but I feel like it was Shivananda. And he was saying like serving others is worth 100 or 1,000 times as much as going to live in an ashram. And that statement kind of killed in the moment. I need to go find a guru. And it felt so spot on. And it was like, oh, maybe I don't need to find a guru, and maybe I'll just sit with this desire. And so I did. And then like 2 months later, like I was kind of following the medical medium at the time, and I don't really know how I feel about the medical medium, but he did make me a lot more excited to eat vegetables. And was one of the influences. Him and actually the Sadhguru were two of like some of the main influences of me going vegetarian, which definitely felt like way more supportive for my body. And I'm still vegan if you're curious, but and he was speaking at this Hay House webinar, and this is like 2 or 3 months after the Shivananda, like me, like hearing that message and sitting with, okay, I'm just gonna sit with my desire for a guru. And it was him. This webinar had like 50 spiritual teachers all speaking. Like they're like hour recordings, and you could just listen to whoever you wanted to listen to. And so I listened to like 12 of them. And the three people that kind of stood out for me from that was Matt Kahn, Diana Cooper, and Carolyn Myss. And Carolyn Myss, I've read like Anatomy of Spirit, and I really admire her directness, but I just didn't really stick with her teachings as much as I did like Diana Cooper and Matt Kahn, which are like huge influences on my life. And like pretty much since finding Matt, like I would listen to every talk he would do, like at first at YouTube. And like this was also right like when he started Total Integration, and I ended up picking that up, which was like his first like every other week offering. Before then, I think he just offered like Angel Academies like once a year, and was doing more private session stuff rather than offering more like public or group work. And like finding Matt and being like, oh my God, like him talking about like you're doing nothing wrong, and me feeling like I was doing everything wrong really had me hooked from the first moment. And also Diana Cooper being like, whoa, she's talking about like ascended masters, and we're doing this visualization, and it just felt so powerful and made me want to listen more. And so I started out really having Matt as a big influence, and actually listening more to Diana Cooper's teaching partner, Tim Wild. I think I was just attracted to like, I guess, male energy a little bit more at that time, and doing Tim's visualizations here and there and listening to pretty much everything Matt was doing. And I went through seasons, but for the most part, I was listening to every talk Matt Kahn did for like two to three times, and almost lived like that until really probably like this year. So that was like I found him when I was 21. I'm 27 now. So like the winter of this year, I just started focusing more on my teaching stuff rather than listening to as much him. But really huge influence, and really, really changed my life in a positive way. And I will forever be grateful, and really taught me that like conscious channeling was a thing, and like watching him teach and being like, I want to do that. Like, I don't know if it's possible for me to be like a intuitive or channel that he is, but like, oh my God, his answers were so on the money. They were so deep. And it's like, how do you do that? And I want to be more like that. And the gift about the internet is like whoever we spend the most time with are the people we become more like. But even if we don't have access to someone on the day to day or in the physical, if you spend some time with someone through their teachings on the internet, you are going to become more like them. If you listen to psychics, you will become more psychic. If you listen to intuitives, you will become more intuitive because we all have those gifts. And the more we listen to someone talking, the more we are aligning with their energy of openness, awareness, being more open to receiving psychic energy. Um, and so that was really, I mean, I really credit, like I would not be a teacher. I would not consider myself an intuitive or be making YouTube videos if it was not for Matt Kahn. And in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of like a prodigy of Matt's work, or like kind of following in his footsteps to a fair degree, and a prodigy of Diana and Tim's work too. And eventually ended up switching more over to Diana Cooper's work a little bit more just because I don't have the money to do both. And I like how she posts offerings a little less, which is kind of supportive when you have less money. Even like now I'm looking for a job, don't have a lot of money. And then also her work is a little bit more concise than Tim's, even though they're both beautiful and I love them both a whole lot. Um, and so that kind of happened my junior year. And there's just like and then to circle back, junior year, I also like really felt like I was going through like a nervous system rewiring and starting to like be, I think, prepared a sense to be more safe and settled in myself. And when you go through a nervous system rewiring, essentially like everything felt like everything would like jack up my nervous system a little, just because my nervous system was going through massive changes. And it kind of felt like every little, like I just felt very shaky in myself, and also felt like, just like I was like, this was a mantra my junior year, is like it wasn't really that intense of a time so much as it just felt intense in my body through going through these changes. And I would just say like, put one foot in front of the other. It's like just I like always felt like during this time I had the spirit animal of a ram, which rams are like very like, they're not scared of big cliffs. They're not scared of walking on a razor's edge, or and they're able to make big leaps and growth, even on like very thin ledges. And that's like, it felt like I was making big leaps of growth, and like life, like the internal changes made life feel really hard, and just felt like kind of like also like the earth was shaking, like was moving underneath me. And so I just felt like very like things would like kind of pick up my nervous system or agitate my nervous system a lot easier during that time. And that kind of went all the way till the start of my senior year. And so if we are feeling like our nervous system's kind of like a live wire, or feeling like very agitated by life, and feeling like life just feels really hard, even though our life isn't that extremely hard, it could also be that our nervous system is being rewired a little. And also during that time, recognizing like even like I changed my major, which was me recognizing like I need a little bit of an easier course load for the changes that I'm going through internally, which is kind of interesting, but it was actually what I needed during that time, um, to help with the settling and changes of my nervous system. And then going into my senior year and starting to feel pretty good, pretty a little bit more on my healing path, a little bit more comfortable and confident, although still fairly introspective and quiet. And, like before I ended up getting the friction burn on my penis in high school, like the reason why I didn't end up feeding the powers of my like lust or craving for sex was like, I was like just a shy, super in my head. And that was like, that's been a pattern that's been like slowly unraveling over years and years. And so like I'd say senior year was like me starting to find my way out of that just a little, of feeling like I don't need to hide so much, or I don't need to make myself small. And like I talk about in college, like I didn't have a lot of friends, but I did have a couple. And recognizing that, I can open, even having the desire of wanting to make a couple new friends or put myself out there a little bit more was like really an intention senior year. And kind of fast forwarding to like second semester senior year, like during that time, during sometime in senior year, I stopped masturbating completely to try and really like work, even with the symptoms and stuff. It was still like kind of over masturbating a lot and really trying to work on that, which I think was helpful. But what you learn about, especially as a 20-year-old, if you're not masturbating, your hormones are just going to get super spiked up. And so for me, like what ended up happening is like I would get like anytime a girl walked by, I would like stare at her butt just because like my hormones were so spiked up from not masturbating. And we learn like we really need to manage our hormones. And like even if we're like trying to work on like not fully relying on masturbation as a coping mechanism, still masturbating a little to give yourself some release, like maybe once every 2 weeks, would be really helpful. And it's something I was not aware of at the time. And I actually interpreted it as like my inner child was mad at me for thinking I was straight. And that's why I'm getting such strong hormone responses, because I didn't know they were hormone responses at the time. And I thought that my hormone responses was my inner child like always pulling my attention to look at girls' butts because it was mad at me for thinking I was straight. And so then I had the thought of I must be gay. And also I read this line in Carolyn Miss's book of like when homosexuals like start to reclaim their voice, or reclaim their voice or something was the line. I don't really remember. It was something along that. I felt this explosion of sexual energy in my sacral chakra too during that time. And so I went, maybe I'm gay. And now I'm really like, now I would say my sexuality is more fluid, but I tend to be a lot more attracted to girls than I do guys, even though, that's just my orientation. And it doesn't mean that any other orientation is wrong, but that seems to be my orientation. And, uh, and so I literally thought I was gay, and then and told my whole family I was gay. And then even though I wasn't, again, like too scared to like be intimate with anyone due to like me feeling self-conscious about my reproductive system because of like the little discoloration I had from the like symptoms from my digestive system. And so literally the girl that I was in love with my freshman year ends up coming back into my life, and we're hanging out and I tell her that I'm gay. And so we end up just being friends. And it actually was in a lot of ways really healing from thinking like from pornography use that the only way to connect with people was through sex, and then being able to share like a loving relationship with this person, but us just being friends and her ending up dating someone else during that time. And actually it was like what I think I needed to start to realize, oh, like you can share deep love with someone of the opposite sex and not have sex with them and not have to date them. And that was kind of eye-opening at the time. That was not how I was really thinking at the time. And during that time, also COVID started to happen. This is my senior year, it's 2020. COVID starts to happen that March. And then what also ended up happening is I had this experience of like, after COVID hit, of like, I would be lying down and I would feel like these tubes of light start to come over me, and they would be different colors. And it happened a couple times of like blue, and I think maybe one was yellow or purple. And I would feel this tube of light come over me, and then I would feel like I wanted to sit with it because I didn't want to disturb whatever energy was coming through me. And so this was like when like I started having a little bit more spiritual experiences. Also like during, I think, my junior year, I was blessed and allowed to do a somatic therapy training where like I saw, like, I was one night lifted out of my body and saw myself as my ascended master self, where I was like, had dark blue eyes with lightning bolts in them, and started to have, and I had like looked like a WWE wrestler with like pure white, long flowing hair. like WWE wrestler, in the sense I looked really jacked. And what you learn is like your ascended master self exists out of space and time. And so it isn't so much of I'm trying to become an ascended master, but aligning myself with the version of myself that already is an ascended master outside of space and time, because we are living this life, remembering our mastery, and also have already completed all lessons of growth and mastery all at the same time, because all our lifetimes are simultaneous. And so I had that experience and was had like an and so and then was like a year, that was like junior year, and then senior year starting to feel these tubes of light come over me, and sitting with it and starting to meditate for a long time when I would have these tubes of light come over me. And this is like I'm still closing out my senior year, because thinking like not wanting to disturb the energy. And when I do sound baths or like do like a good yoga class, like my vision tints different colors, which often tells me that that practice was healing. Like it'll tint blue or green typically. And I was getting that would happen in like Shivananda yoga, and it would happen like I would do breathworks. I did a breathwork ceremony too around that time, and that would also happen during then. And this was different. It literally felt like this like tube of light was coming over me. And so that happened a couple times. And then after that happened like three or four times, and I meditated with it. Like I started to have this experience where I'd be listening to Matt, listening to Diana Cooper, just lying down, and I would feel like it almost felt like a very thin needle, and it was going in my ear, and it felt like it was adjusting my like meridians, and also like realigning like some of the energetic templates within my body. And I almost also felt like almost like bones or fascia shifting in my body too. And that started to happen after the tubes of light. And during that time, I was given a vision of like one of the times sitting with the experience, and my higher self holding my head with a bunch of angels and guides around me, and essentially were essentially the beings that were realigning my energetic structure and even physical structure to some degree during these experiences. And it sounds a little crazy, but it was like it was my experience, and I interpreted that experience of I need to sit with this for a really long period. Like if I sit with it long enough, then it'll stop happening. And so started meditating super long periods of time while I'm still in school, my senior year, like after COVID. And this is still the spring of like when COVID first hit, and my ears would like physically get sore, like really sore after sitting with it. And so I was literally like starting to meditate like 8 hours a day, and thinking that if I just sit long enough, that this experience will stop happening. And I think sitting along with it kind of helped things shift a little bit quicker. And like it literally felt like new layers of like energetic grids were slowly eventually moving into my body, of like sitting with this. And like I could even feel sometimes energetic grids around my head, and then feeling them like over like a couple of days, I would feel them, or maybe longer, slowly feel them start to integrate in our body, integrate into my body. And this was kind of like when I was starting to have like spiritual experiences where it's like, wow, haven't heard anyone, and I'm sure other people go through this, but I hadn't heard anyone talk about that at the time. And I didn't really trust the vision I had of my higher self and guides holding me through these experiences. And so I didn't really know what was happening, but it didn't feel bad. It just felt like things were moving. And like there were literally times when like my neck was felt like it was getting realigned, and all these things happening. And I know it sounds a little crazy, and I would probably think it was crazy too if I wasn't the one who had experienced it. And so that started to happen like the second semester senior year, and was so literally sitting in these super long 8-hour meditations while in between doing schoolwork and in classwork, and thinking that if I just sat long enough, that it would stop happening. And that turned out not to be the case, because it still happens day to day. But I just realized that that was an interpretation, that wasn't reality, and I'm allowed to sit with it or not sit with it for as long as I desire. And oftentimes before I go to bed or before I wake up, or even sometimes when I'm doing my own spiritual work, I'll feel things like shifting still. But I started to realize, oh, don't have to sit with it forever. I'm allowed to live my life, but not realizing that at when it first started happening. And so would do super long meditations where I was just feeling things shift. Also, during that time, like I was like submitting an application to start a master's program for school. And then feeling that my things start to happen with my ears and thinking that I can't get up from this. I have to sit with this experience. And like the application for that master's program was the next day, and I had written the paper, but wanted to rewrite it some, and feeling like I couldn't get up from the shifts that were happening. And so then not finishing my application and not submitting it. And this was like maybe I think maybe Friday. And then like 2 days later, Loyola, oh yeah, I went to Loyola University, if you were wondering, in Chicago. Then Loyola, coming out Monday and being like, hey, like to submit, since it's COVID and no one's applying to master's schools, it's like 50% off. And all you have to do to apply is submit your name. And so there was like some weird blessing synchronicities during that time too. But I think I'm gonna cap the video at that, because I feel like I talked for a long time. And I hope that, I'm gonna do some follow-up videos, but this was kind of the start of my spiritual awakening journey. And I hope that was helpful. Thank you for listening. Love you all. Bye.